Imagine a continent whose very identity is forged in these, well, epic struggles. You've got ancient empires, independence wars, vibrant cities, vast untamed
Yeah.
landscapes.
Hmm.
Now imagine how those dramatic stories, those rich cultures, and those deep-seated conflicts come alive in its literature. It reveals the very soul of a people.
It really does.
Today we're embarking on an extraordinary journey through that world.
It's truly a dive into identity, resilience, and, an artistic spirit that has just continually reinvented itself. Our mission today is to explore the rich and incredibly diverse evolution of Latin American literature,
Right.
tracing its origins and key developments through history, pretty much right up to the present.
And for this deep dive, we're drawing from this really comprehensive Latin American novel course document. It's a fantastic resource,
Mm.
offers a deep, insightful look into the literary traditions, the cultural context.
Which are so vital.
Exactly. And all those historical forces
Hmm.
that have shaped the region's, well, unique storytelling.
Hmm.
Our goal for you, our listener, is to give you a clear shortcut to understanding how Latin American literature truly became conscious of itself.
Hmm. That's self-awareness.
Yeah, how it grappled with its own unique identity and how it ultimately, captivated the world. We want to do this without just overwhelming you with information.
Right. Cut through the noise a bit.
We want to unpack the surprising facts, the pivotal moments that reveal the beating heart of a continent through its written word.
And a key takeaway right from the start, something that often surprises people, is that Latin American literature as a really distinct entity, it found its most powerful, its most independent voice only after the Wars of Independence, so around the 1850s.
Uh,
And this period set in motion literary trends, thematic explorations that still resonate powerfully today.
that's a fascinating starting point. Really sets the stage perfectly. So let's travel way back then to the beginning. The echoes of ancient worlds, the scars of conquest. Let's explore those pre-Columbian and colonial roots.
Okay, so in the pre-Columbian era, communication was fundamentally oral, not written as Europeans understood it anyway. There weren't books in that sense.
Right. No printing presses.
Exactly. Instead, knowledge, history, culture, it was all passed down through generations via these incredibly rich oral traditions. We're talking epics, myths, religious narratives, practical knowledge about agriculture, astronomy.
So much complexity, just spoken.
Absolutely. This reliance on the spoken word, on communal storytelling, it created this profound foundation for the continent's narrative imagination, long before ink hit paper in the European way.
And these ancient civilizations, I mean, we're talking incredible sophistication, real ingenuity. Take the Mayas, for instance. They span southern Mexico, northern Central America, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador,
It's a
Belize.
huge area.
And they were master mathematicians, astronomers, architects, building things that rivaled ancient Egypt. And their calendars were astonishingly accurate.
Unbelievably so.
What's crucial, I think, is their resilience. They didn't just vanish, did they?
Not at all. That's a common misconception. Modern Maya people continue their cultural practices, their languages today. It's a living link to that ancient heritage.
Oh, okay.
And then further south, dominating the Andes region, Peru, Ecuador, down to central Chile, you had the Incas.
Machu Picchu comes to mind.
Exactly. They forged this immense kingdom, famous for sites like that, yes, but also incredible roadway systems, precise agricultural wonders that fed millions, and uniquely, they used these knotted cords called quipu.
Kipu, right? Not
Yeah.
writing, but
Yeah.
records.
Sophisticated records, yeah, instead of an alphabetic script. And their centralized language, Quechua, isn't just still spoken today, it carries the echoes of that powerful oral tradition.
And then the Aztecs, centered in central and southern Mexico, their capital, Tenochtitlan City of Gods, near modern Mexico City. Just spectacular.
Breathtaking by all accounts. They developed advanced agriculture, even farming on tricky, dry, and swampy lands. They had intricate stone calendars. Tenochtitlan's buildings, like the pyramids of the sun and moon, were aligned with astronomical precision.
Amazing.
And their language, Nahuatl, gave us everyday words like chocolate, chili, avocado.
I never hear that.
So these complex societies with these rich oral traditions, myths, origin stories, intricate cosmologies, they formed this deep wellspring for the continent's identity. Even without written books, that storytelling impulse was foundational.
Right, the themes were there. Humanity and nature, gods, destiny.
Exactly. And that heritage, it imbued later written works with a distinctive voice. You often see nonlinear time, personified nature, this deep spiritual connection between land and people, things quite different from traditional European narratives.
So after these vibrant cultures, the narrative shifts dramatically with the colonial period. Suddenly, the story is being documented mainly through European eyes.
Yeah, the priests, the explorers, the conquest narratives, it becomes, initially at least, their story of discovery and domination.
But not entirely.
No, definitely not. There is always a counter-narrative, a persistent echo. You get native documents like Kwame Nkrumah's incredible Nueva Crónica y Buen Gobierno,
Oh, yes.
offering indispensable indigenous perspectives, a crucial, often heartbreaking glimpse into the experiences of the colonized, challenging those dominant European accounts.
It's fascinating that modern authors still look back at these early colonial works. What is it about them? Is it the Broke style, maybe?
That's a great question. I think modern Latin American authors often do look back at colonial Baroque works with their elaborate style, the stark contrasts, those grand themes of faith, empire, the collision of cultures. They see them as the true genesis of their literary tradition. Not just historical records, but the first, often really conflicted, attempts to articulate a new hybrid identity on the page.
A hybrid identity.
Yeah, and this period also saw the rise of the Criollo identity. These were the privileged Latin Americans born in the colonies. And they felt this strong tension with the peninsular elites, the Spanish-born, who came over to rule.
Ah, okay. So born there, lived there, but still sort of second tier to the ones from Spain itself.
Precisely. And that internal conflict became a powerful engine for early literary expression. It was a way to process this new, complex reality.
So they're using the colonizers' language, European forms, but living this American reality.
Exactly. And that tension fueled a desire for linguistic nationalism. You get figures like Andres Bello, Domingo F. Sarmiento, José Martí. They actively pushed for linguistic and literary specificity.
How do they do that?
Well, they weren't just writing. They were trying to reform Spanish spelling to better reflect local sounds, creating collections of local terms, cubanismos, argentinismos, founding national language academies. It was a deliberate effort to forge a distinctively native literature.
It's like taking the master's tools to build your own house, isn't it? Bending the language to tell their stories.
That's a perfect analogy, a powerful act of cultural reclamation. It really shows the enduring power of language as a tool for identity.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. The colonial shackles are broken, mostly. A new turbulent chapter begins. The 19th century, this crucible where nations and their literature are grappling with defining themselves.
Absolutely. And the winds of change were partly external, right? The French Revolution, Napoleon invading Spain, that weakened Spanish control significantly.
Right. Created a power vacuum.
It did. And internally, local cabildos, the councils, they stepped up when King Fernando VII was sidelined. This led to ruptures with Spain, accelerating independence movements everywhere.
And it's such a vast stage. You've got the big Spanish viceroyalties breaking apart. New Spain, Mexico, Central America, New Granada, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, where Bolivar dreamed of Gran Colombia.
Then Peru, with strong loyalist areas holding out longer. And Rio de la Plata, Argentina, Paraguay, Chile, Uruguay, each region had its own struggle, its own path.
And we can't forget movements like the Haitian Revolution, the first successful slave revolt turned nation, or the long Mexican Revolution, Cuba gaining independence relatively late.
Right. And what's key here, I think, is that these political upheavals weren't just about flags and borders. They were profound moments where Latin American identity, culture, and especially its literature really began to forge its own path.
That makes total sense. So post-independence, the literature starts exploring its own character. European Romanticism comes in, but with an American twist.
Exactly. Poets like Heredia, for example. He takes romantic nature poetry, but infuses it with this intense emotion, this fierce passion for national independence, translating European forms into a distinctly Latin American voice.
But this era also brings that huge debate. Civilization versus barbarism.
Ah, yes, the polemic. Famously articulated by Sarmiento and Facundo. It starkly pitted civilized ideals, often meaning European, urban, Enlightenment ideals against the perceived barbarism of the American interior. The plains, the jungles, the indigenous peoples, the gauchos.
So city versus country, European versus native, in a way.
In a simplified way, yes. And thinkers like José Martí and José Enrique Rodó continued wrestling with this fundamental tension.
It sounds like a real identity crisis playing out in print. Did writers push back against this simple binary?
Oh, definitely. And one way was through Costumbrismo. This fascinating trend blended romantic interest in common folk with realism. It aimed to vividly depict local customs, the calimbers of everyday people, peasants, city dwellers, rural folk.
Like literary snapshots.
Pretty much. It thrived in newspapers, especially between 1830 and 1880. It was a powerful way to establish cultural and national identity, to show what made each nation unique.
Any key examples jump out?
Well, José Joaquín Fernández de Lizardi's El Periquillo Sarmiento from 1816 is often called the first Latin American novel, and Esteban Echeverria's El Matadero, written around 1838, though published later, is this incredibly stark, visceral piece of Argentine fiction engaging with social order and raw power.
And then the gaucho literature, focusing on that iconic figure of the Pampas.
Right. Initially, in works like El Periquillo Sarmiento, the gaucho might be shown as part of an oral, maybe violent culture needing civilization, the wild frontier needing taming.
Sarmiento complicated that.
He did. Facundo showed how bandit groups, often led by gauchos, could create their own kind of alternative order, even a sort of state where formal government was weak.
Wow.
And later, novels like Romulo Gallegos' Doña Barbara explored how these emerging nation-states might even co-opt or appropriate that bandit violence for their own ends, bringing the frontier under control, establishing legitimacy.
Surely makes you think, doesn't it? Who gets to define civilization and barbarism? Whose stories shape the national narrative?
Exactly. And for a powerful example of giving the marginalized a voice, look at José Hernández's epic poem, El Gaucho Martín Fierro from 1872.
Oh, Martin Fierro. Iconic.
Totally. It gives voice to the gaucho himself. He declares his independence, his pride. He's this figure who, is held by some as a bandit, grim and gory, but he demands respect for his life, his ways.
The tension is palpable. A national symbol, but also an outcast.
That tension runs deep. And building on this, you have indigenismo, because the history of America is also the history of the Indian, but often told by white and mestizo writers.
Right, from colonial times onwards.
Yeah, from Fray Bartolomé de las Casas' sort of idealized portrayals, which fed into Rousseau's noble savage idea, to later works mixing romanticism with sharp social critique.
Who were the key writers in this indigenismo movement?
Major figures include Clorinda Matos de Turner in Peru, with Ave Sin Nido, a landmark novel, Miguel Angel Asturias from Guatemala with Hombres de Maíz, and another giant from Peru, José María Arguedas. They brought indigenous characters and concerns to the forefront.
Even if it was sometimes through their own cultural lens.
True. And in Peru, it's particularly interesting because the large indigenous population was so central to forming the state. This led to movements like the Puno Avant-Garde Indigenismo in the 1920s, Gamaliel Churrata, for instance.
Avant-garde indigenismo, how'd that work?
They used experimental techniques, surrealism, non-linear narratives to express regional and ethnic identity in really radical ways, especially in publications like the Bulletin Titicaca. It wasn't just about representing indigenous people, it was about deeply grappling with that fundamental part of Latin American heritage.
Okay, moving into the 20th century now.
Yeah.
Revolutions, modernity, the global stage. The Mexican Revolution feels like a huge turning point, 1910 to 1920.
Absolutely pivotal. You have to remember the context. Porfirio Diaz's long dictatorship, decades of simmering discontent. Then Francisco Madero calls for democracy, and boom, it ignites. You get legendary figures like Pancho Villa in the north, Emiliano Zapata in the south, fighting for land and liberty.
And the literature that came out of it.
It's immense and often categorized in two phases. Early works, written during the fighting, often raw, emotional, sometimes political propaganda. Then after 1920, more polished novels looking back.
Like memoirs, almost.
Many blurred that line, yeah, like Martín Luis Guzmán's El Águila y la Serpiente, or José Rubén Romero's Apuntes de un Lugareño. They mix autobiography and fiction. It really shows how personal experience and this massive historical upheaval just became inseparable in shaping the stories people told about the nation. Individual lives completely swept up.
Right. And as cities grew, modernized early in the century, there was a challenge to those older, maybe exotic, rural views of the continent.
Definitely. A push for a new aesthetic, a more modern, cosmopolitan literary voice for a changing world.
Which leads us to Modernismo, Latin America's first homegrown literary movement, right?
That's the one. Starting around 1875-1886, often pegged to Rubén Dario's Azul, Darío from Nicaragua, he's seen as the quintessential modernist, known for his anarchist aesthetic, meaning a pursuit of pure artistic freedom, beauty for beauty's sake, rejecting old rules, especially in poetry. His influence on Spanish language poetry was just massive. Alongside him, figures like José Martí, Gutiérrez Nájera, José Asunción Silva.
And that energy flows into the 1920s avant-garde.
Directly. Fueled by huge global events, World War I, the Mexican and Russian revolutions, the 20s, saw this explosion of new writing. Poetry, short stories especially, blending national themes with international cosmopolitan influences, intense experimentation.
And alongside the avant-garde, you had the novel of the earth or novel of the jungle. More realist.
Yeah, a strong realist trend in the 20s. Focusing on the unique geography, the culture of different nations, the raw power of nature, human struggles within it. Think Ricardo Giraldes in Argentina, José Eustacio Rivera's intense La Voragine in Colombia, Romulo Gallegos' Doña Barbara in Venezuela,
And Horacio Quiroga.
Quiroga, Uruguay and Argentina. Brilliant, often dark stories exploring barbarism, the power of nature, human fragility. He even left a decalogue for the story writer, emphasizing craft, emotional truth, concise power.
Okay, which brings us to the boom, the 1960s.
Monumental. Context is key again. The 60s saw a loss of that earlier 20th century optimism, growing awareness of deep poverty, inequality, a revolutionary climate, especially after the Cuban Revolution in '59.
Right. Huge political and social ferment.
And literature responded powerfully.
And the world suddenly paid attention. Unprecedented global recognition. Names like Borges,
Master of Labyrinths,
Garcia Marquez,
magical realism taking flight,
Julio Cortázar,
experimental narratives,
Mario Vargas Llosa,
keen social and political realism,
Carlos Fuentes,
exploring Mexican identity.
and poets like Neruda, Octavio Paz. Nobel Prizes started rolling in.
They became household names for educated readers worldwide. And a core theme for many boom writers was challenging privilege, challenging dependency on the West, challenging authoritarianism, a strong critical edge.
The classic example has to be 100 Years of Solitude, right?
Absolutely. Quintessential boom. It both illuminated Latin America for the world and maybe kind of fixed the perception around magical realism for a while. That famous leaf storm passage where endless rain washes away history, it perfectly captures that blend of the extraordinary and the ordinary, rooted in real struggles.
But the boom wasn't static, was it? It evolved.
Definitely. By the mid-'70s, things were changing. Right-wing dictatorships were rising. Economies faltered. The boom, as that cohesive 60s phenomenon, started to shift. Authors moved in new directions.
Different styles, different themes.
Exactly. More historical fiction, exploring city life, metafiction, testimonial literature. The landscape broadened beyond just magical realism. The literature kept evolving, refusing to be pigeonholed. And it's worth noting, Argentina played a big role here.
Oh, so.
Well, they had a more consolidated literary industry, strong public education. It provided the solid base of critics and readers, which really helped foster that environment for groundbreaking work.
Wow, what an incredible journey we've covered today. From unwritten tales to colonial clashes, the search for identity after independence, right up to the global boom and beyond.
It's really been a ride. And what truly stands out, I think, is that Latin American literature has never been just one thing. It's this continuous, dynamic conversation. Yeah, between its indigenous roots, its colonial past, and its ongoing quest for self-definition amidst all this constant social and political change. It keeps reinventing itself. It reflects the truly pluralistic, ever-evolving nature of American expression. It's as diverse as the continent.
A literature that just refuses to be pinned down, always transforming. So, thinking about today, new global challenges, shifts in power, changing societies. What new revolutions might be shaping contemporary Latin American writers?
That's the big question, isn't it?
How do those deep historical currents, identity, memory, the search for an authentic voice, keep flowing through the literature being created right now? Maybe in ways we haven't even fully recognized yet.
It invites us to keep reading, keep exploring.
Absolutely. Something for you, our listener, to think about. How do these themes resonate today in unexpected ways? It really just invites us all to keep exploring this incredible, living literary landscape.